If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a couple opening announcements. Looks like Phase 3 will begin tomorrow for the North Country, June 12th, and that means the opening of our restaurants for internal dining and 50% capacity and a whole long list of other stipulations. So that's exciting news for our area. The fact that the restaurants have been waiting for so long to open their doors to the public. Town Hall also will be officially opening up on Monday. We've had full staff back now for about a week, and we have our plan to be acted upon later this evening regarding returning to work. So, and then the last item, just to announce, is that June 17th there'll be another food bank truckload delivery drive through the Ticonderoga Central Middle School. That'll be, I think, 12 o'clock, kind of the same format for those who had used it last time. So that's also being provided by the Northeast Regional Food Bank.
You requested to John last time that we could go up and do this, because there's like 17 people we gave to.
Yeah.
Can we do that again?
I think you can. Just coordinate with them. You guys will make a special.
To volunteer?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
We went up and got some of the.
No, you want to go up special for the seniors that
The
you
seniors,
serve,
the homebound seniors.
not volunteer at the program.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you meant,
I
yeah.
think you can.
To go through and get
Yes.
food?
Specifically for shut-ins or,
It's open to whoever goes in line and now.
Sometimes we get 3.
Well, John put a bunch of stuff, we got like 17 different people that had mothers, kids, and
Yeah, just, we'll figure it out. There's no set checklist.
for that.
Bring your truck.
For bus.
They go to the little one.
All right.
So we might just want to give John a heads up and then can go through each station and you deliver right after.
Last time they let me in first, they just went right through and
Okay.
We have no, obviously, public or presentations, no Board of Health report, and no department head report, so we're going to jump right into our committees. Greg is here to give us an update on water sewer. So I'll pass it over to Greg. I think you made a report. I didn't actually get a chance to disseminate it to everyone else.
I didn't actually bring with me
yes,
here,
they
but
have it, they have it.
Did you send it?
We've got it, it's in our
Good.
packet.
I'll
Yeah,
take
that's
care
why I
of it.
answered Greg and said I got it.
I figured I would have to save this stuff.
Thank you.
I didn't give it to you though, because I figured you'd look it up. It's up here.
Did you give me a packet?
We have an agenda, how can we pack that?
They got a packet.
Oh, the attorney?
Go ahead.
Just a couple of things, the main reason I wanted to come down and go over was Portage, but on the overall water project, working on the air unit, there's also the warranty item with the well pipe, that seems to be resolving itself. The contractor proposed to actually do the welding, so they suggested they came back with that, so we're working on getting that squared away, hoping that'll be taken care of in the next couple of weeks. And I think there's one other warranty item on the MP we're trying to get squared away, and then pretty much everything's done. There'll be paperwork, which will probably take a while. It sounds like there's quite a few delays at the state level, surprising, so we'll take our, it'll probably take some time to get all that cleaned up and closed out, but should be in pretty good shape. So I think we have a committee meeting next week to get started on this topic. So we've got the water meter report that was due to DEC just about done. We're going to go over that committee meeting, that we submitting that, which will be starting the process of applying for funding for water meters and any other water projects. We'll see where that goes at this point. I don't have an answer perfectly on where the funding will come from on that one, but at least get the process started to meet DEC required deadlines.
What's the deadline, just to refresh me on the water meter installation?
It was 5 years from last year, so we're 4 years.
Okay.
Water meter this year,
2025.
yeah,
Okay.
more than that range, yep.
So I thought,
Yeah, basically planning on applying for funding this year. Obviously, if we get a home run of funding, then we'll move forward. If not, it'll, in and a few other things. So that's pretty much everything on water. There's the old projects mostly wrapped up, new project, we start chipping away at it. And then on, what's the third thing on water? On wastewater, besides the portage, the wastewater treatment plant project itself is basically done. There's some punch list items, and then we closing out those contracts. And then at some point, we started getting into some planning just for future planning, just to be ready for the next rounds of grant funds whenever those come out. I mean, I'm hopeful there'll be something with stimulus money this year or next year, who knows, but even if there's not, we just want to be ready. And we really have actually done most of the work that we've planned out in the past, so we just want to get ready. Put a little bit of hold, obviously, with everything going on, but we'll just be picking away at that probably the next couple of committee meetings, just to be ready in case something does come out. I think that's everything else, really. So the portage is obviously the big one. There's a couple things. One is we have the updated bond resolution documents. That is to increase the bond resolution cost to cover the additional grant that we got, and encapsulate the bid we actually got, plus a little bit extra for some of the extra work that if we have money left over, we can handle. Because the agencies will require the bonds to be updated in order to actually go through the financing process.
So it's not going to increase the loan, it's just because, it's just due to the grant, on that correct?
Pretty much. I mean, technically, the grant gets you to like 19.5 million. The bond resolution we put forward is 21 million to give ourselves enough flexibility in that. The financing cap is essentially 20 million though. So if you go to 20 million, you're increasing your loan a little bit. But that actually, in order to do that, we actually need to maximize that to maximize the loan for the grants, because one of the grants is a percent grant. And you have to spend pretty close to 20 million to get the full grant. So it is a little bit of a loan increase. It's not a huge amount, but I believe the projects to date authorized are about 19.5 million, which is right about that maximum number. We've gotten the habit in the past of making our bond resolutions exactly where we thought we'd be, and then we have to come back and deal with them. This gives us a little bit of flexibility within that, just in case we end up with some extra, particularly grant money, use up. So that would be the one big piece, and then obviously the other one is, you guys have actually already authorized us to move forward with the portage project, but with everything going on, we've held off and moving forward with it. Wanted to get it kind of basically re-okay to move forward with it today, or decide what you want to do. Because I can't get anything official from anybody. What we've seen is there's been some delays in the reimbursements of grants in this last few months, as the state's spending money on, obviously, all the COVID items. As far as we can tell, nothing has been canceled or pulled back. It's just delays. And I've obviously had a lot of conversations with Matt. Matt's definitely the more conservative one. I'm a little bit more of the aggressive one on things, but we've talked it through. I believe something we can manage, and I give you my logic why. He was a little bit on the fence because he's gone through this before. We've seen this happen before. Things get delayed. The problem is you just don't get definitive answers. So, so it's up to you guys. I mean, there is some risk in moving forward. I think it's manageable, and the reason, this is the reason why. So, this project in particular has got a couple of things going for it. One is we've got a local contractor that's good to work with, and we've worked with them already. What we've done already is try to set up the schedule of the project such that we could manage it. If one of those grants got canceled on us for some reason, we could scale back the project like at the end of this year, essentially. So what they're going to do this year is they're going to install just the sanitary sewer main, and also buy some of the pipe materials for the other parts, for the storm and the water. That's about $3 million. The remaining $5 million or so will be the storm, the water, and the road construction. That will be completed next year. So if one of the grants was happen to be canceled on us, what I would do is at the end of this year is we would scale back, probably pull out the water main, some of the storm water work, and probably some of the road reconstruction. If we didn't want to, obviously you could spend that loan money if you wanted to, but assuming you didn't want to do that, we could scale it back. I can't say there's not cost to doing that. Obviously the contractor has incurred costs, and we have to work that out with them, but I believe that's manageable. They're not starting something this year that they're going to leave half finished. The only exception would be, obviously, they're gonna be cutting into the road and they would be patching it. So if we cut back somewhere, it would depend on how much, where we cut back and how much of the road we actually did. That's not usually the case. Usually when you start something, you just gotta go to the end. But this one particular one, because we've got distinct utilities, we can, and they're doing that in a particular order that works, I think we can manage it that way. So I think, and then the other piece of it is, the way the grant loans work, you actually have to spend your loan money first, then your grant money. You're spending about $3 more million in loan overall. That's about what we're gonna spend this year. We're gonna spend about $3 million this year and about $5 million next year, so you're not actually spending your grant dollars until next year anyway. So the delays that we're experiencing right now shouldn't affect the cash flow. And hopefully over the summer we'll get clarity from exactly what's going on. As I said, all the agencies are moving forward, that everything's still in place, they're just not processing payments very quickly. So,
The loan rates, they haven't been set yet, correct?
No. Well, there's
yours is 0%.
0%, but there was some question as to the next phase, but they're hoping it'll still remain at 0.
They've told us it's 0%, yeah, they did confirm that, so. Yeah.
So if they put in the sewer main this year, does that mean they're gonna be connecting the residences to the sewer main, or just installing the main down the road, and it'll sit empty through the winter, or what?
No, they're connecting the residents as well. What their contractors plan actually is to have one crew start on the sewer main, and fairly soon after have a crew start on laterals, just connect the homes right
Okay,
after.
so then the sewer, so then will the stormwater continue to run into the plant
Yes,
as well until next year?
for the most part, yeah.
So you just have two separate intakes, one will be stormwater, one will be effluent.
Essentially, yeah.
So they'll have to hook up the water next year, they'll have to redig all the laterals twice.
The water laterals ideally are separate trenches anyway. We're trying to get them, they're supposed to be 10 feet apart, so we're trying to get them separate, yeah. I mean, because it's a 2-year project, you always have some, because we'll put temporary paving back in for the winter, so you're gonna have some cost, but we would have done that anyway.
If the funding doesn't go forward next year, worst case scenario, we will have upgraded our sewer line to the plant, but we will not have accomplished what we originally wanted to do, which is separate the stormwater. Is that
So
true?
what we would have to do is we would have to, the grant they would likely pull would probably be the $5 million DEC grant, because that's the one that's not set yet. So in order to actually maximize, the other grant is the one that's 25% of your total project costs. We still have to spend a certain amount of money to get that 25% in anyway. So if we spend $3 million this year, I would think we'd probably spend some portion of, $1 million-ish, somewhere in that range next year on storm, because we do have to disconnect the storm. At least the lower part of it, because that was actually the whole basis for getting the funding in the first place. I'd have to really run the numbers, I didn't do an exact total for you, but I think you'd be pretty close to what the original project was back several years ago. So you'd be spending roughly about the same amount of loan money and grant money that we were originally planning on. Might be off a little bit, but it would be pretty close within the scheme of things, so.
So refresh my memory then, so there's two different tranches of grant money, one for $5 million and one which is 25% of the total?
Correct. And it was 25% of the total,
Capped at 13, something, right?
that particular grant's capped at $2.8 million,
Okay.
because it was based on a $14 million project.
Right.
But with the $5 million grant, if we spend 19 and a half, we actually get the whole 2.8 million. If you pulled out the $5 million grant and spent 4 to 5 million, you'd get the whole piece. Half of that grant's been spent, because half of it was spent at the wastewater plant, and the other half is spent here. The other option, just to give you the other side of things, obviously I favor moving forward, but to give you the other side of things, one is we could just cancel the bids outright and wait to rebid next year. Really don't like that option, because we were right at the end of the top end of our budget. If we bid next year, I'm sure we're gonna be above it. Contractor has held their bids until the end of June. They have a 45-day period, and they agreed to hold their bids. So we actually have until the end of June to make the decision with that. We can ask them to hold their bids longer than that. I think, I'm sure they're willing to work with the town being local, but at some point there's a real cost to holding the bids. The biggest question is, do we get any clarity within those next couple of weeks or a month or 2 months over the summer? My gut feel is probably not. I would love to say yes. I mean, EFC has told us they're trying to get clarity from the state exactly what's going on. But we all know how everything goes. So, and right now, obviously, we're losing prime construction season, and it's only gonna get more expensive, and at some point, material costs are gonna go up.
Just to clarify in my own mind here, I guess what I'm thinking about is, you know, it's the adage of hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see from you guys, because you're holding the money in the spreadsheet of some sort, is if we go forward this year
Yeah.
and spend the $3 million, and then we don't get the $5 million grant because it goes away,
Right.
then how much is it gonna cost the town to finish what's gotta be completed? That's what I wanna know.
We can get unlimited loan money, though, right?
Yes, you can.
So we could really take that 5 million that we're waiting in grant and convert that.
But yeah, but then you got a loan, not a grant.
Right, no, I'm understanding, the question is basically comes back to the board to decide at what point we want to cut it off, because that's what we were doing before we awarded it back in December. We basically were to phase it in and figure out how much we thought we could actually work in stages to get the entire length of the portage complete. When we got the award, it was like, great, this takes that aspect of having to, for us to sit here and figure out what that's gonna be. So to answer your question, I think what Greg would do is he'd come up with scenarios saying, well, you want to spend another additional $1 million in loan, you want to spend another $3 million in loan, here's what we can do, here's kind of the cutoff points, and it's up to you to decide, up to us to decide, at what point we wanted to cut it off at, so.
Yeah, but what I heard you say is that if we go through with the phase that you wanna go through this year and put in the sewer line and the laterals, then next year, we have to do the stormwater separation, right?
We have to do the stormwater separation from Cannonball to basically Battery Street.
Okay, so there's an amount of money there, right? And that's gonna be a loan or 0 inches long or whatever it is to finish that. So that would be, you know, a stopping point unless we decide to go forward, because that's something we have to do. What I'd like to know is how much money that is.
Yeah, and I wish I had looked that one number up for you, because that, we talked about as an obvious one. But I'll get that for you. I believe we'd be spending probably about $1 million to $1.5 million more to get that work done. And it would depend on how you wanted to finish the road a little bit, you know, patch or try to reconstruct it.
Yep.
If we do that, off the top of my head running the numbers, you have to spend, I think, about $4.5 million to maximize the 25% grant. And that would be basically the same amount of loan money we're planning to spend. So I'm pretty confident off the top of my head that that would be about right. You'd spend about $4.5 million total to do that 2 phases, and it would put you back where your grant and loan money was originally in the project. So I can run those numbers a little bit more accurately, just make sure I'm not off, but I'm pretty confident saying that's pretty close.
Please do, because that's one of those things where we don't need a surprise and come up and find out that we finished this year, and then, oh, by the way, you got to, you know, because we've started, and now it's gonna cost $3 million to finish, you gotta do it. So it would be nice to know what that worst case scenario is.
The $3 million, also that $3 million includes, and actually the estimate was about 2.6. There's some engineering costs, there's some just construction management, so I rounded that in. But it actually also includes buying the water pipe and the storm pipe, because we would buy that this year. So that would be the main thing if we ended up canceling, is that the town would own that pipe already. And the reason being is pipe prices fluctuate so much that the contractor would want to buy that this year to lock in that price. If you didn't want them to buy the pipe this year, you'd probably have to negotiate something with them to pay the actual price next year. So I would suggest that we would buy it, because worst case scenario, you did cut it, you'd have that pipe for the project or another project at some point.
Is that HDPE pipe?
The water is ductile iron and the storm sewer is HDPE. Yeah. So that would be the main downside to have canceling it.
So the contractor, I mean, are they ready to go? If we say give a thumbs up this evening?
I have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning if you give me the go-ahead. So yes. But I mean, what I recommend, if you guys think you're going to move forward, or if you're able to move forward, knowing that I can get you some better numbers, that would be great. If you want the better numbers first, that would be fine. And just the sooner we can make a decision, the better.
I would say start.
Are we looking at, we need to make a resolution?
Well, I was gonna do a resolution, so he had something that the board was in agreement to do, so. Any other questions for him on that?
I'd like an indication based on what Tom said, but I'm comfortable based on your history with the project, much longer than my tenure, and understanding that our exposure is no different than what was originally talked about. And just all we're talking, any delay, we're looking at escalation in cost and risk with the contractor. I mean, I'm comfortable with at least taking a vote and seeing where we fall, and then, you know, that you're gonna get us additional information so we can make the decision at a later date. But it's middle of June, and that,
Yeah. I think what Greg probably could do too is just as a precautionary measure, just like you said, expect the best but prepare for the worst. You could probably parse out kind of stopping points, just like we were gonna do before. That way, we get something to chew on between now and fall, and hopefully by that time, there's some movement with that money, and if there isn't, then we at least know what we're doing for next year, because I'm sure that's your contingency plan in the back of your head, as to how do we get at least what needs to get done for this project to be successful, even though we're really going after a whole bunch of other steps that are gonna make the whole corridor that much more improved upon, you know, in the long run, so.
maybe we could get a little, you know,
Back in or
political pressure to, you know, get some just awareness to the fact that, you know, it's a very important environmental project to protect our roads.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I think it's good.
in Anne Arundel,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely any advocacy on any of these would be good, because it's definitely, that all these delays are holding up a lot of things, obviously. I guess the way I look at it too is, if I thought it was really gonna be in trouble, I would certainly say so. I think we can manage it. Obviously, if something changes, we're gonna have to deal with it, and obviously Matt will be part of that too, but we'll have to be in it together and figure out a solution, and we'll figure out something that makes it work. Can't promise it'll be perfect. You know, if we do have to cut something back, there'll be some cost to that. But I know if we delay it or cancel it, there'll be cost, so it's one of, it's that risk reward thing. So yeah, if that's, whatever you guys decide today, but I'll certainly pull together some more thoughts on the timeframes and things.
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks. Just one other thing, if we agree to go forward and something changes in a week, 2 weeks, or maybe even a month, and obviously the contractor has started and they've incurred some costs and stuff, and we say we need to stop for whatever reason that may be, what kind of penalties are incurred if we have to stop the project in midstream and tell them, finish up, put it back so the road's in workable order, that kind of stuff, and go away? Is there a penalty to us, as we have the contractor, other than cost incurred today?
So your costs incurred, what would you be? We would have to make sure that we made them whole. This project, the way we bid it out, it's broken down into a lot of line items. So I believe a lot of their front end costs, like bonds, insurance, all of that stuff, is actually a line item. We'll get paid. So we'd have to make them whole on that sort of thing. We'd obviously have to pay for any materials that were purchased that can't be returned. And then probably the cost of closing up. After that, probably not. Your cost would be probably in the start back up again. With prevailing wage rates change at the end of July, or beginning of July. They would have had to factor that into some degree, but if we then kick out, if we put too far out, it kicks into the year after, then you're gonna have costs, increased costs there. So, yeah, what I would say is there would be costs in shutting down when you start back up. I think the cost in shutting down would be somewhat minimal.
So that brings me then to a logical conclusion, is that any materials such as the water pipe, that it wouldn't be installed until next year, even though it's in this year's budget to purchase, isn't purchased until, at the last minute. I mean, if we're not gonna put it in until next summer, they don't need to buy it in July, just so now they've built up a line item for us to pay if in fact we shut it down.
So the problem is there will be a cost for doing that. When they bid the job assuming that they would be able to purchase the material right now. The cost of ductile iron pipe fluctuates by the day. So if you were to hold off on that, you would have to basically agree that you would pay the current price next year. So you can do that, but I don't believe we can force the contractor to hold off on purchasing.
So that's a differential charges, essentially.
Yeah. So that would be the risk in that, and then who knows where that's going to go. So I'm sure we can manage it for you, but that would be the one thing. So that would be a decision.
We need to kind of have that, we need to just at least let the contractor know that because of the uncertainty of going forward here, the uncertainty of getting financial money, we don't want to put the town in a position that we have front-loaded a lot of cost in this contract that if it doesn't go forward, we gotta pay for it, right? I mean, that's the concern, right, is to front load a whole bunch of costs. So just want him to be cognizant of it, so that, and I'm sure they are, but just wanna make sure that, you know, we don't get in a position that, you know, you buy materials for the project that isn't gonna get installed until the last day on the first day of the project, right? I mean, it just because of the uncertainty.
So if that is the way you want to go, I agree with you in general, it is, with particularly the pipe materials and a few things, if we definitely want them to hold off on purchasing, we will have to formally do that with them, and there probably will be a cost to doing that.
I'm just saying that we need to broach the topic with them,
Yeah,
so
no, that's
that
fine.
they're aware of it, and if they can delay something, then obviously it makes sense to delay it. If there's going to be an additional cost to delay it, then I think that needs to come back to the board to say, this is a decision, we can delay it, but it's have to cost you this much money, so we can make an informed decision on that point. I don't want to get down the road and find out we owe the contractor a whole bunch of money, and we can't move forward, and this stuff's gonna sit around out there, all this construction material, that's gonna be unused for an indefinite period of time.
That's fine, we can do that, and like I said, we've got, contractor we can work with to get good answers on that, we can present that to them.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll get back that feedback, so no, that's fine, we can do that.
Is that meeting here tomorrow?
Yeah, it's 7 nights, is that one of the, what is Tracy?
Data State, okay.
Okay, yeah.
At what time?
9.
9 o'clock.
So,
That's if we vote and say yes.
correct. Yeah. I was trying to get as many things prepared as possible in case you said yes, because we're trying to get going, but if not, then that's fine, we'll certainly deal with it, but.
Does anyone have any reservations before we vote, or is it any, I mean, what you break up are ones we had kind of talked about, but I think they need to be out there, so at least we have some contingency plan moving forward.
Yeah.
But, and then, Mark, that's kind of what you're, you also, yeah.
I want to see it before we get any further in the summer and
Yeah.
incur any incremental costs.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just want to make sure that we are thinking about the contingencies in case the worst case happens, and I want to make sure we thought through it also. With that being said, and I would agree to move forward, as long as you can get back to us in a due course with the additional cost and some of those other items.
This project's been like, move a little bit, take a step back, move a big jump, jump forward with the $5 million, take a couple steps back because of coronavirus and all the implications that was that, so
Yeah.
overall, I think it's really.
I know, my construction manager is frustrated, so just in general, because we've had one of the best construction springs you've had in a long time, other than that couple days of snow in the middle of May. We've lost all of May, half of June, not just this project, almost every one of them.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a small part of the world, but still. So, yeah, no, that's fine, I will certainly get that stuff back to you, and I will relay that to Mike, our construction manager, to start that conversation with the contractor tomorrow. So they've generally had these conversations, trying to get as good a plan in place as we can anyway, and we'll add those things to it. That's all makes sense to me.
All right, so, do you have anything else to report on, or you?
I don't think so. I wanted to make sure we just talked that through, so.
I just got 3 resolutions then. One is the resolution to proceed with the Portage project effective immediately, despite New York State holding out on dispersing grant funds during the coronavirus. They're still pending that holdout, so.
I'll move it.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Okay, along with that, we also need to do a resolution to schedule a public hearing for the Portage project bond resolution. This is going to be pending attorney and financial review of the particular details and the amounts. That'll be, the public hearing will be set for July the 9th, I believe, is our next regular board meeting at 6 o'clock. So I'll move that.
So just, so you know, it's a public hearing on the matter to increase and improve the facilities of sewer districts 2 through 11 in the town of Ticonderoga. It's not, it's for the entire
Yeah.
bond, it's not specifically for the Portage project.
Yes, that's what you did bring to my attention, and I didn't. Thank you, Tom.
I'll second it.
Who first it?
Joe and then Mark.
Okay. I have to do a roll call
Oh, okay.
vote. Mark Russell.
Aye.
Tom Cunningham.
Aye.
Joyce Cooper.
Aye.
Dave Woods.
Aye.
Joe Giordano.
Aye. Okay, and then the last one, given the hardship that everyone has faced in town, the town had we've been having some conversations about what we can do. Obviously, the federal government's provided stimulus money. There's been other packages put together for the businesses and for individuals, you know, to kind of get through this precarious situation. The town had relaxed its penalties for second quarter, because coronavirus kind of hit us right towards the beginning of the second quarter billing. There wasn't really much we could do, but in having some conversations about what the town can do, we'd like to propose, or not propose, but to offer a one-time 50% reduction of the O&M, operations and maintenance charges for the third quarter billing. This would exclude debt, it would just be O&M, and it would be paid from fund balance for both water and for sewer rates. So this is the town's way of taking some of what we have to be able to relax the payments from our constituents, both business owners, of course, and residents, and everyone has been kind of hit by this. As a good faith effort, just to say that, you know, we recognize the difficulty in this and, you know, to kind of help everyone, you know, get back to where we were at before. It's going to take some time, but it's a good faith effort. So, and I think if anyone wants to say anything on that, but I know I'm in favor of it, and, you know, it's going to be kind of unanimous support of this particular resolution.
I'll move it.
Second.
Unanimous second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. All right, and that's really all I've got for water sewer. We're gonna have a meeting, have a resolution later on, but we're gonna have a kind of catch-up meeting before we reinstate regular meetings for July. That'll be a little later in the agenda. So, thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.
We're gonna get this up to you. We'll get going.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
you.
Appreciate it. All right, have a good one. Thanks.
Thanks. Drive careful on the way. Are you overnighting? Or are you coming back in the morning?
No, we're going home. I'm not going to the meeting tomorrow. My construction manager will be here.
No. Who is that?
Mike Metcalf.
Mike.
Mike.
He's been here, you may have talked.
He doesn't come to the committee meetings. He's been in town. You won't miss him. Trust me.
That little guy, right?
Yeah. So, no, he's pretty good. I'll make him a call, give him an update on what we talked about, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. And just, if you kind of want to attend, you're more than welcome to.
Where is it again? The KSC is in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
So as far as committees go, there really is no formal reports on any of the remaining committees. Airport has just been working on some of its normal annual service maintenance related aspects with our filter at our fuel farm. But we'll be convening at some point here in the future to take care of a few other items. So I don't really have anything to compare. I think the only thing I will say is that we hit 7,000 gallons of fuel sold from last year to this year. So definitely have been, you know, that definitely has been increasing year over year since we put
A lot
it
of
in.
activity up there.
Yeah. And then I'll pass it to you for public safety, Dave.
Okay, I don't have anything other than appointing, make a resolution to appoint Jen Gander and Rhianna Peters to the Public Safety Committee. Oh,
You
what's
move it?
that?
You move it?
Yeah.
Second. Mark, second. All in favor?
Aye.
So carried.
We just need to firm up the agenda for the meeting.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll go with it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, I don't have anything on highway prepared.
Under public safety, did we get any confirmation about, we had a police officer, it sounded like, provided some good support to a citizen.
They did, and actually, Chief Hurlworth's putting something together for that, so I think that'll be reported on one of our officers' response for an EMS call.
All right.
But I think I talked to him,
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be done.
If six recognition would be appropriate, especially
Absolutely.
the current
Yeah.
environment. And
You know, I said, you don't realize how much the police do. I bet you, out of all the codes we've had, if we had 10 there, 8 of them, they show up for, they hear code, they're there. And they've been there a lot of times ahead of us doing CPR before we even get there.
Right. I had a conversation, he's gonna present.
Yeah, no, it's fine, just,
Yeah, just, anything else on public safety?
On the highway, we're going over some possibilities of starting to fix the foundation, get some bids and stuff.
I don't know if it falls under there, but sort of because of the planning. What was the outcome of the 4th of July meeting at the, with the Chamber of Commerce? Anybody able to attend that?
Yeah, we all.
Yeah.
Everybody sent me?
Yeah, you were rather busy.
Yeah.
We're gonna reconvene on Tuesday, I think it was. Plan is to move forward with having them, but just to try to figure out exactly how that.
Yeah, as community friendly as possible.
Yeah.
While following,
Yeah, they were going back to the Department of Health to kind of see what they could get short of forcing everybody to stay in their car.
perfect. Community unity gathering,
Yeah,
some peaceful protest, it's accepted.
yeah.
We can make that announcement. I'll say that's good, you can all participate.
I don't know, did you have anything for buildings and grounds, parks and rec, anything of, human services, I guess with the youth, but, you know, maybe correlating with our buildings and grounds, the town is looking to open the beach. We don't have any firm date for opening yet. We're working through our plans and protocols to be able to open the beach and be able to have the proper protocols in place and procedures for allowing the beach to be accessible for 50% of its occupancy, which is per New York State rules regarding opening your beach, as well as a number of other items regarding use of facilities. So there should be some announcements coming next week, but we just need to put that plan together and get the other necessary paperwork in, permitting and other stuff.
Do we still need to be looking at putting up a fence?
That was it for the close the beach.
No, because you have to have a single point, you have to have a single point of ingress and a single point of egress, so you can count the people and make sure you know who's in there. So you gotta have something that closes in there, because you can't just walk in, you gotta be able to go through a gate, you gotta leave through a separate gate. According to the last state mandate that I read.
How long
I think
ago was that?
we'll probably come together and put together some sort of
Yeah.
plan and see what we need to do to provide that. If we need to go, what route we need to go.
It may have changed.
Yeah.
I would, just because guidelines have been somewhat changing and when like the governor's open, just some of the things that came up, we moved into phase 2. Like to me, rather than spend any money on it, is do we have something that we can roll out low cost to cover that if needed, but I just anticipate when they have that flood of people to these other beaches, there's gonna be some personal responsibility, and it's gonna be so difficult to manage it. I think some of that restriction will be lifted by the time, because we're targeting traditionally the first Monday after school graduation is usually our opening day.
Yeah.
Hopefully
somewhere
by
that
the end of
time.
June.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we've got 2 weeks, and graduation's moved to that last Saturday.
27.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think we would want to roll it out in a way that we can have a few days with lower anticipated crowds weekdays before we actually hit a weekend.
And
Especially the weekend of 4th of July, which will be the next weekend after the graduation.
right after. And then
So we just want to make sure we've got our ducks in a row, because this is kind of a new undertaking. You know, we roll this out every year, and there's a lot of preparation, a lot of, to get it open to begin with, and now we're adding on top of that these additional precautionary measures and making sure that we've got our staff well trained to work with the public and give them direction as to how they can enjoy it, have a safe environment, and enjoy the beach, but at the same time, be mindful of, the circumstances under which everyone's under.
Has Grant been given a heads up on this? Do I need to talk to him?
Yeah, we've had some conversation, but not to the extent, he's
The
still
affirmative stuff.
he's still dealing with, the recurring issues of, what he's finding there every day when he's up there.
Yeah,
so.
I need to talk to him. Perhaps we need to purchase a couple more trash cans too. That might solve it. Bigger ones.
Okay.
But was there some repair needed on the chairs, other than the sunscreen?
Yeah, we're gonna come up with something for the summer.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
make sure that they get, yeah. But there's a whole protocol of lifeguard transitioning, you know, the time in the sun, time out of the sun, those sorts of things, which really needs to be reviewed, to make sure that, again, this is outside of the COVID aspect of it, but to make sure that we've got all eyes on the beach for those who are coming, for which we're providing oversight on. So there's a lot to be done, needs to be done, and we'll need to, you know, pull in our resources for all aspects of it, from whether there needs to be fencing and so forth, to kind of guide ingress and egress, to what our groundskeepers are gonna provide in maintenance and service, and then lifeguards for what they need to do, and, you know, even beach monitors to make sure people are social distancing, wearing your masks if you're not, things like that. So there's a lot that still needs to come together, so. But I know the public, I've talked to a few people, have been asking about the beach, and, you know, I think we need to, I'd like to see it open, but I just don't wanna do it, you know, cavalierly. It needs to be done appropriately.
Well, we'll need to change the capacity too, so some change in signage.
Right.
Maybe just tacked on to what we already have.
Have we found a head lifeguard?
So we've had applicants for the lifeguard, so I think we're good to go from that standpoint, as long as everyone's still good to accept. If we haven't offered anything, we still need to go through the protocols and go have the interviews to make sure that everything's set with them, so. Probably reach out for your assistance if you'd like to be part of that. There's plenty of work to be done.
Yes,
It's a short-
I think it needs to be prioritized with the grounds crew.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk and
Okay.
as far as the seniors go, I guess there's only two items really that need to be mentioned. One, our senior bus is now back in full operation with the caveat or the precautions that only 3 people at a time can be on the bus. They have to be wearing face masks. Our bus drivers are trained in keeping track of their on and off, pickup and drop off. So in case there's, you know, in case there's an event where we have to do contact tracing, we have that information readily available. And they're doing the proper disinfectant, you know, and so forth. So, and then, I don't know, Dave, did you get any update on the new bus?
It's coming, it'll be at their plant in New York this week.
Okay,
They will have it first or second week in July.
okay,
And he wants to make sure that all the drivers
get trained.
and everybody, he's got to train because of the lift.
Yeah,
And there's, like he said, there's a lot of things that they need to go over.
Okay.
Told to give me a week's notice.
okay, that's good.
Do I need to contact Franklin about putting the labels on the bus?
Probably, yeah.
Give them a heads up anyways?
There's no way you can remove the labels when they're put
I
on.
don't know. I think there's,
Well, the new bus we have, the current bus we have,
Yeah,
and
it's
labels
only got
gone
2 years.
2 years. I don't know if you can pull it. Can you
they're
pull it?
lying on them, can you pull them off?
I think so, with the heat gun.
Yeah.
Can you reapply it?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I'll talk to them.
All
That's
right,
a good point, yeah. I know you can take them off with a heat gun.
yeah.
Because Bobby Pound really took some off for me. And works really well.
I don't know if you get it reapplied. Health insurance, I can tell you that the rates have come out from Excellus. Over the last several years, they've kind of ranged between 6 and 8% on average, about 6% on average, but right now, they're looking to be around 3.1%. And the state, of course, they still have to go through state review, so that number could change a little bit, typically, I would imagine lower. So that's a good sign, given everything else that's, you know, been impacted throughout this process. Contract negotiations, put together, working with our labor relations consultant, put together the 2 options that we're going to present to the highway guys sometime here, either next week or the week after, and hopefully get that contract resolved at that point for them to vote on it. And IT, cable TV, working on the cable TV franchise agreement, and with regards to IT, have found necessary passwords and so forth to be able to access our domain that has been kind of out there in cyberspace. We'll be going through the necessary preliminary measures we have to take here with regards to computers and emails. And the next phase will be really initiating the purchase purchase process for upgrades for the computers, since a lot of them are running on older systems, especially like Windows 7, which is no longer being supported. So those things are coming in, hopefully sooner than later, once we get some of these other priority measures like the beach open and things like that. This can become the next thing and to get that wrapped up. So we'll move on to general resolutions. Resolution to accept and correct the regular town board meeting minutes of May 14th, the special town board meeting minutes of the 21st, the finance meeting of May 28th, and the special town board meeting of June 3rd.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carried. The next three are our essential committee meetings that we're going to schedule for Tuesday, June 16th. Just to kind of get caught up, we haven't had committee meetings for most of them for at least 3 months. So each of the department heads is kind of putting together, along with the committee head, putting together kind of essential items for the agenda, so we can just kind of touch base on what we need to get moving on, and then we'll resume regular meetings hopefully in July. So the first is a resolution to schedule Public Safety Committee meeting for Tuesday, June 16th at 8 a.m.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. A resolution to schedule a Highway Committee meeting for Tuesday, June 16th at 8:45 a.m.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. And a resolution to schedule a Public Works Committee meeting for Tuesday, June 16th at 9:30 a.m.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Next, I have a resolution to accept the resignation of Laura Wright, effective June 9th, 2020.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carried.
And Laura's been, it's hate to see people leave, they make personal decisions, but as Dave mentioned, she's been a long time employee for the town, and it's always appreciated, and I know they do a lot for the community. I saw her and Mark on the street the other day, so
I know.
just, we don't have an audience tonight, but just, I always hate to see people go, and those are personal choices, and but just want to recognize them for that, so.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Resolution to advertise for full-time, part-time clerk position.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carried. A resolution to accept the property cleanup bid to Adirondack Mountain Season Care.
I'll move it.
Second.
Property cleanup bid had to do with litter, junk in yards and so forth. We've done this now the last couple of years.
There's no link to it.
Yeah,
Lawns
just
and stuff.
annual bid that we put out to see who's interested, and Mo's done a great job for us, so I'm sure you'll continue.
These are the properties that are being left unattended.
Yeah.
Vacant, abandoned, and ones that,
There's some questions around them, when people saw the advertisement in the paper, crossing, like, we already had,
Didn't understand.
not understanding what it was for, so.
yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carried. Resolution to adopt the Return to Work Action Plan. This is that plan that our HR consultant has been working on regarding returning our businesses which interacting with the public to make sure that they are up to par with the current guidelines as provided by all the pertinent agencies from the CDC and Department of Health and so forth, as well as our employees, their safety throughout this whole process. So,
I'll move it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carried. We've just got some financial resolutions here. The first is just to create resolution authorizing, it should say authorizing the creation of budget accounts, following budget accounts. So resolution authorizing the creation of the following budget accounts. That's how that resolution is worded. And this one is central data processing, equipment, server, and accessories. This one,
It's not on our agenda.
no, it should be.
Yeah,
It's on back.
It's kind of like right next to the,
top one, back page.
That's budget adjustments.
well, it shouldn't be adjustments, it should be creations.
Okay.
Frank was working on this and I copied and pasted it, but I didn't grab the right resolution, so that's my bad.
Stop confusing me.
I apologize. So,
Gotta keep you online.
Which is into account category, capture the data processing IT type
Yep.
stuff, okay?
yeah,
I'll move it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
It's okay. So we have two categories here for budget transfers. The first one has to do with items in the general. I'll just go through them real quick, top to bottom. The discount on taxes, contractual expense, those are monies that we owe back to the county. So back to the other resolution regarding Adirondack Mountain Season Care. We have money in our budget to do property cleanups for those vacant and abandoned properties, ones in which, they need to get cleaned up for the code. And the homeowner, vacant homeowner, or, absent homeowner, or mortgage properties where we're trying to work with the bank to get them done, they need to be taken care of now, and then usually they're settled later on. These are ones that have not yet been settled. Hopefully we'll be in the process of getting settled, but the way in which the levy process works here, we take the charge, we levy it to our taxes. The taxes are made whole by the town from the county, but these are not taxes, these are charges, so we end up having to pay the county back for these because they, collected that, but this is really on us to pay. We added it to it. So that's what that charge is for. The next one is the central data processing equipment, server, and accessories. That had to do with the items that we needed in order for us to be able to live stream YouTube, our broadcastings, a couple pieces of IT software and hardware. The police and constable surveillance, a camera charge, monthly camera charge. And the last one was, I guess there was some additional work that needed to be done with the safety gates at the transfer station, in that amount. So they were installed last year, but I guess there was a few items that needed to be kind of corrected or touched up. Okay. And then as for the highway, I guess for the highway motor fuel and lubricants line items have exceeded, their allotment for what we had budgeted. I hadn't talked to Sal to find out exactly if this is to be expected for the rest of the year or what,
No,
but,
it should not be.
okay,
They ended up finding lubricants in bulk, and they hope that's gonna last through the rest of the year.
okay. So that should be a one-time
Yeah.
contingency charge. So both of these budget transfers are just taking money out of our contingency. Frank has noted the remaining contingency left for both the general fund and the highway fund. So I'll move that.
Second.
Any questions?
Is that a typo on contingency? Should it be $90,607?
Out of the highway,
Or is that a separate, highway is a separate
it's a
contingency?
separate account.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it, okay, sorry.
It's a DA account, the other one, top one is an AA account.
Got it.
All in favor? So carried. Then we've got some interfund loans. Again, these are just ones where one fund is providing funds for another project until those project funds are received. So you've got money for the clean water main project being funded from general and then be paid back to general. You've got money for the HVAC planning grant that's being provided from the parent district, mother district for the sewer. And then you have the Chilson Reservoir replacement being funded from the water fund. So, and again, all those will be provided back once disbursements are made.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. And the last one is authorizing the following interfund transfer. This one has to do with the work we're doing on the Chilson Eagle Lake project. And if a district is ever formed, this one will be like a new to, new from type thing, where the monies that have been put forth right now will get reimbursed back from the creation of the district. But right now, as per New York State local law, or New York State law, they can be funded right out of the general fund. So that's what this is being done right now. I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. And on that note, we're working right now with the engineering firm, Barton and Legudis, on the preliminary engineering report that's due to
this month.
That is due to be submitted this month. So just trying to review it, clean up, make sure it's in its final form before we submit it, so that's why some additional charges come up with.
Do we know where we stand with the formation of a district and the residents, Chilson, Eagle Lake? Any movement on that we're aware of?
Well, we're doing two things. One is you have to get the PER in by the end of June, that's given. And then the second item, kind of what we're gonna hand with that, is that we're gonna be sending out packets for them, kind of a survey, more of a technical survey for them to provide us detailed information about their specific property, anything that we would need to be made aware of, like septic systems, or so that as the engineers try to sharpen their pencil and get further into the details of this, they know exactly what they're dealing with regards to properties and so forth. I think there's also some questions that they want to ask about property owners, where they're leaning in terms of whether they think they might be able to have access to do a well, if that's what they want to do, or whether they're, really relying on a system. So to answer your question about we closer to having agreement for a district formation, I think this has always been the chicken and egg question, right? Because the question is, how much is this going to cost? But you can't answer that question unless you know who's going to be in it, what it's going to look like, where you're going to get the water from, how you're going to connect it all. And in order to get that, you have to ask questions of the homeowners to say, what's your interest? And then go back and design a system that meets that interest. So we're going back and forth. Hopefully, when we get to a point, we'll know who is in, who is out, and who's kind of on the fence, be able to provide those options. And then what I'd like to see is not the town making the decision, but I'd like to see the homeowners all along Chilson and Eagle Lake, by working together with the town, with the engineering firm, can arrive at that decision together, and then do what we need to do to go knocking on Albany's door to let them know that, we can use some additional money up here to make this a viable project, because otherwise it's, it's still above what everyone would like to see it be. So. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and move the resolution to pay the abstract.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Dave and Joyce, all in favor?
Aye.
So carried, and then I gave you guys a copy of the supervisor's report, a resolution to accept that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Tanya, do you have anything?
One thing that I have is, our attorney sent us a waiver relating to this whole COVID-19 thing to go along with our use of facilities form for people that use the park or ask for any other facility of the town. And while there has been a couple, and I've been very specific about explaining, to do the 6-foot distancing, the mask and so forth, he actually sent us up a waiver that I can now have them sign so that they know that I told them that, and they know that that's all in here. So I would like the board to adopt this waiver that I can attach to the use of facilities form at this time.
So moved.
That was one that was on the packet.
What's it called? Is it just a waiver?
It's an assumption of the risk and waiver of liability related to coronavirus, COVID-19.
Yeah, okay.
So I need a resolution?
Yeah.
I'll move it.
You're too late.
You're too late.
Joyce and Tom,
Too late, we're good. Can I second?
wake up. No, Tom already did.
I did.
Can I say aye?
You can third it.
All in favor?
Okay, I say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
That's it, I need.
We have to sign them.
Was over there someplace.
Does anyone have anything else? Mark, Tom, you?
No, not for me.
Joyce? Dave?
No?
Okay, we'll adjourn.